You're listening to From There to Here, a Star Trek Enterprise podcast. I'm your first co-host, Justin, and sitting with me in the studio is...
Josh. Today, we're reviewing Strange New Worlds. According to Wikipedia, Enterprise encounters a new world much like Earth. A small crew stays on the surface overnight to continue researching the planet. A violent storm forces the crew to shelter in a local cave, but crew members believe they are not alone.
Ooh. And also, according to Wikipedia, this is, of course, Season 1, Episode 4, directed by, I think, longtime Star Trek director David Livingston, with a teleplay by Mike Sussman and Phyllis Strong.
Its original air date was October 10th, 2001. It guest stars Kelly Waymeyer as crewman Elizabeth Cutler, Henry Lubati as crewman Ethan Novakovich, and Ray Galagalos, who's just known as crewman. I honestly don't remember
that. Crewman number 6. And a little trivia for this episode. This is the first time the Class M distinction of the type of planet is known to come from the Vulcan database, and it's a Minchara class, shortened to Class M.
Until we read that, I had no idea that this was...
I knew that. I actually knew that from watching the series. I picked up on it. They don't actually spell it out. You kind of have to put it together, but I remember doing that originally, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
I think I remember, I could swear we all collectively went, wait a minute, does that mean, and we put it together.
I don't remember this moment, but I'll take your word for it.
I think we did that way.
Well, this is off the bat.
Okay.
It's a pretty good episode. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit less than the one we just got, which was coming off of Fight or Flight.
Okay.
It's decent. I think it was good that they got off the ship and had a little away mission. Mm-hmm. Right from the beginning, though, Archer makes a pretty bad decision. He never really seems to recognize that decision or own up to it.
What decision was that?
Well, T'Pol confronts him with this on the bridge when they come up to this planet.
Right.
And he immediately wants to send people down. And she says, oh, well, we should send an unmanned probe first. We've never been there before. We don't know what could be on this planet. And then he says, yeah, no, we're not going to wait. We're just going to go.
Yeah.
And then the crew ends up paying the price. And he never seems sorry for it either.
He does. I pointed this out as you and I were rewatching it. He does give lip service to her objections, but it's very... smartass, basically. Well, he kind of laughs at her.
He throws it back in her face.
He does. He does it with a laugh, actually. It was kind of rude.
Well, that's it. After that,
she was giving
it's never brought up again.
No, it's not. But she was giving advice to try and help. And
I expected, at least I hoped, that after the crew was rescued at the end, instead of just going right to credits, which this episode does very quickly, they would get back up to the ship. T'Pol would confront him.
But you know what? This is sounding exactly like the last episode that we talked about, where Archer ignored T'Pol's suggestion. Something bad happened, and he doesn't appear to
learn
something. I don't want. I was going to say get his comeuppance, but that's not the right phrase. Mm-hmm. But just he doesn't acknowledge that maybe he should have looked before he leapt.
Mm-hmm. And it's still a good episode. I enjoyed it. There's some tense moments in there, but there's a lapse of logic that kind of takes me out of the episode, because this seems like it seems like they're all intelligent people, and you think they would have these realizations that would come to just about anybody. They're landing on an alien planet, and Guy from Galaxy Quest seemed really worried when they opened up the door and didn't think if there was air there or not. But they're breathing the air. They don't seem worried at all. They have no idea. They have not run scans on this place. They're just walking right into it. Mm-hmm. And you think any rational thinking person, any scientist, any astronaut that would be smart enough to get that position would probably think, maybe we should wear some suits first before we think it's safe.
But that would only be done at the captain's order, and clearly he was in a different state of mind.
Well, you think especially the captain would have given that.
I think
we wouldn't have an episode, but
well, sure, but they were excited. They read that it was acceptable to human life. So, and when they get down there, it looks like Earth. So they feel
But
safe.
it made them look very dumb.
Arguably.
It was hard for me to get past that part.
I see. Well, I mean, you're definitely right that it would have been nice if Archer had a moment where he recognized. The episode has that moment with Archer and Phlox, where Phlox says, "I didn't think to scan this thing. You know, this guy might die. I'm so sorry, Captain." And that would have been a moment for Archer to go, "We've all made mistakes today."
Yeah, that was crewman Novakovich.
Crewman number 6. Yeah.
Well, red shirt.
Red shirt.
As soon as I saw that guy, I'm like, okay, that guy's screwed.
Well, yeah,
I'm sure everybody had that opinion.
You know something bad will
because
befall
crewman
him.
Cutler, I know we see later, but this
Sure.
guy, I was like, okay, this dude's dead. Something bad's gonna happen to him.
At least he lived, but no.
Well, so we've been told.
Well, yeah, but I really do think that in that sick bay scene, that would have been a good moment for Archer. Just all we needed is one line for him to say, you know, we all make mistakes. I made one too. That's why he's here. You know, and that's it. We're both going to learn something today.
Yeah, I mean, he got angry with Phlox because Phlox gave him a bad diagnosis. You know,
he was frustrated, of course.
Well, okay, frustrated is a better word. He didn't seem to have that inward diagnosis of his own behavior.
Yeah,
which I found very disappointing.
Yeah, because if you think about Janeway in particular, she would actually turn on herself and get really mad at herself when something like that happened, because she was always quick to take responsibility for something she did and learn from it.
She was really big on self-sacrifice to save her crew.
Yeah, she was all about that.
She always wanted to do that, and everyone else had to stop her.
True.
Yes.
She was also very empathetic when the moment called for it. You know, Janeway, I think, gets a bad rap, but maybe this isn't the time to talk about it. But regardless,
Probably not.
no. But just this lesson needing to be learned, the way Janeway as a character was written, it would have probably been handled that way in this episode. But, and in all fairness, they've only got, 43 minutes these things usually clock in at. And the action's taking place on the planet. It's real estate. If there was more time in the episode, maybe they would have thrown a scene like that in. But they wanted to keep the episode focused on, the real problem. And something I was actually consciously thinking of as we were watching it was, even though, like we have said from the pilot up until here, which isn't far, right out of the gate, they have a fairly good sense of their characters. Like you could take this episode and plop it into season 2 or 3, and it really wouldn't feel that out of place. The characters basically stay this way for the most part. And I say for the most part because I do think later in the series or even season, you would have had that scene with Archer where he recognized, because Archer's not at the point of self-reflection yet. He's looking before he's leaping. And so I think that's something they work on with his character as it goes. And I know I complimented, and I'm not trying to take away from that compliment, Jolene Blaylock's performance. I feel like this episode, I felt the actor working on the character. And it was more so in her mannerisms, and I realize this is a very tricky episode to do so early on when you the actor are still learning the character. Now you're having to I would imagine she as an actress is being told, okay, so here you are in this scene with Trip, and everyone thinks that you were talking to someone down in that cave, but when you talk, you can't just go, come on, you're crazy, that didn't happen. You have to deliver it in such a way that makes it suspicious sounding, but not. Go. Action. That's probably very difficult, I would imagine, especially when you're still learning the character. So, I mean, I'm not saying it was like overflowing with that sort of feeling, but it was something I felt as I was watching her performance, because, the when they get to the cave and they all start tripping out and they all start pointing fingers at her, it's all on her performance. And that's the trick, because she has to play it just right. She could have very easily played it stoic, but completely not guilty, but she had to play it with just that little hint of suspicion in her eyes to make them trip out. To contrast your thought, you had said that you felt this was a slight step down from the previous episode. I thought it was equal, if not maybe a little better, because of this tension in the cave.
Well, let me explain that. Okay. I rated it that way because of that lapse in judgment that I mentioned. And then the third act, which I felt was a little too long. The standoff in the cave was too long.
I agree.
It had an interesting premise, and I did like how, they kind of foreshadowed the eerie moments to come with Mayweather telling that ghost story, around the campfire. I thought that was kind of fun and
goes on a little too long.
A little different, yes, but it was fun and cute. Yeah. And then how they start hallucinating, and it's done very quickly, and they think they see, well, it's people dressed like Enterprise crew members at first, and it's very off-putting. You see them very briefly, so it's very unnerving. I like that. That was building up to something.
Yeah.
Even though it was quite obvious they were hallucinating, it was still eerie, and I enjoyed that.
Obvious to us. Why they wouldn't think twice about it.
Yeah, that's one of those lapses of judgment I would think that everyone, at least on the Enterprise, would have come to immediately. Like, clearly they're hallucinating. T'Pol would think, clearly you're hallucinating, and just say that to everyone, we're hallucinating.
Right.
But they didn't do that because the episode would be over. I did enjoy in the cave when Trip started to really lose it for a little bit.
Started to trip.
When Trip started to trip, it looked like Connor Trenier was almost playing him drunk for a little bit, and I was like, okay, that was interesting. I thought he did a great job. He was playing manic for like a large portion of that segment, and
I was getting flashbacks to Broken Bow where he was all intense and into Paul's face.
I guess I don't remember him being that intense.
Well, you and I felt that differently.
Okay, well, I mean, he was really,
yeah,
he was really getting into it, and I thought he did a good job.
He did.
It must have been hard to keep that up,
that intensity
for that amount of time. It must have really tired him out.
It probably did.
But like I said, it went on just a smidge too long.
I agree with you.
The standoff could have been done 5 minutes earlier. It still had the same effect.
I think they repeated the same gag twice, and they shouldn't have done that, where they've got Archer on the comm.
Right.
And he says, hey, trust me, do this. And then a few minutes later, they do the same scene again. And that's where I was like, okay.
Right. And he's hallucinating, seeing these things.
Yeah.
And it's been made clear to everyone at that point that these are hallucinations.
They should have condensed that into one discussion.
I think then I would have felt better, maybe rated the episode a little higher.
Okay.
Then, of course, if they had that extra scene at the end that I also mentioned, I would have rated it higher, but they didn't have that.
Right.
I also liked seeing Crewman Cutler.
Yeah.
And
she's cute.
She's very cute, and she appears a few more times, and I can see why they brought her back. She's very likable, and I kind of wish she was a main crew member, a main cast member, because she's just likable.
She definitely recurred a handful of times.
She does a couple more times that I remember off the top of my head. I don't know if that's past season.
I know she got
one, but
as close as one could get to Phlox. That was kind of a burgeoning, not relationship in that sense, but she was connecting with him personally, which was neat.
But she was interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, what the actress brought, I really liked, and it's unfortunate she wasn't able to continue because she died.
Yeah, she passed away during the production of the series.
Yeah, and I don't remember what of, but
I think it was a medical condition.
Yeah, something like that. But it was really sad to hear,
and very abrupt from what I understand.
Yeah, I remember looking it up, and because I'd wondered, what happened, and then why didn't she appear ever again? And I thought,
that stinks.
Yeah, it's really she was young, very young.
Hits your mortality bone, Yeah,
it's too bad, because I'm sure she would have been on many more times.
Oh, I'm sure she would have. I mean, they were obviously painting her to be a recurring crew person that you see all the time. So I agree with you about the third act, that especially the repetition that happens, that kind of kills not so much the momentum. It's just, like, okay, we've done this already. But I do, and I agree with you that Connor Trenier's performance was very good, and that he kept that manic intensity up. I already explained my thoughts about T'Pol. I wonder, do you think the episode would have played differently, better or worse, if after they started to hallucinate, or maybe just before, if they had been able to beam out Mayweather and Cutler, and if it was just the two of them in the cave, do you think it would have made a difference?
Well, they were passed out anyway.
They really were. So it's almost, you kind of wonder, why were they there? Although maybe they were there so he could be protective, because otherwise maybe he would have just tried to take her out.
It would have. There's more at stake with them there.
Yeah, no, you're right.
You're right. There's something he's guarding.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
But why couldn't they beam them up? Oh, they did. They tried to beam up that crew member.
However,
Novakovic. And then,
yes,
right.
But during the storm, when the storm was still on, they were able to beam in just to the entry point of the cave, the medicine.
Right.
So surely they could have stood at the edge of the cave where none of that crazy stuff would get into your body and just beam up.
Well, they should have known there wasn't any of that substance in the cave anyway. But I guess it was a risk they didn't want to take. It wasn't addressed in dialogue.
No, it wasn't. But given our history with Star Trek, I would assume once they reached a certain depth of the cave, the transporters couldn't establish a lock. So they would have to get... I mean, I would assume just even in the dialogue that Malcolm gives when he beams it down, he said, I can safely put it like 3 meters inside the entry of the cave.
Right.
That's about it. So just stand there.
There should have been a direct line of dialogue.
Yes,
though,
there
that
should
said,
have.
we can't get a lock on them through this cave. It's made of such and such.
Yes, they should have.
That would have made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah. I did enjoy Archer trying to go down with the shuttle pod to try and, bring them back up and having to churn away.
Never seen a shuttlecraft defeated by wind before.
Yeah. Like it didn't seem it was that strong.
They like to bump these things into stuff. Like they did that twice in Broken Bow.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe they should have added a, bit like, what was that episode? Power Play, where the shuttle gets knocked down by electrical storms and all that. Make it a bigger deal, as to not just wind,
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because it seemed like he was like 10 feet away. You can't put it down. You're right there.
And they spun the camera around.
I mean, literally his line is,
well, they just did that in post-production.
well, yes. You can't be afraid of the wind. Like turn into it, man. Angle the nose up and put that baby down. Come on. You were close. Like you could have hit it with a rock.
Yeah, they were pretty close.
Maybe if they had stayed at a distance, maybe that would have been a little more reasonable.
Overall, didn't you find it a little bit of a safe episode?
How so?
How so? I mean, the threat was, pollen, and it's making them hallucinate on a planet with no one that's inhabiting it. It all felt a little...
No, I don't think so. I think it was, especially given that the previous episode was a threat of an actual alien, enemy, essentially. I like that this episode was the threat of the air. They didn't think about pollen in the air. And that was
fine.
interesting.
That's fine, but the way they went about it didn't make any sense. They're explorers. That also means they need to be a little cautious.
So you're coming back to the original captain's choice to go down there.
Well, yes, the captain's choice, but everyone that didn't acknowledge the fact that it's an alien world, and there might be things they're going to run into that aren't like Earth.
Sure.
It didn't seem to come into their minds. They treated it as if they were, and...
Well, that was their folly. I mean, that's the lesson.
I know, but that's part of the safe writing that I'm talking about. No crew would be that inept that they would get themselves into that situation in the first place.
Well, they try, obviously not for you enough, to explain that in dialogue, in the sense that in that opening scene on the bridge, when T'Pol says, well, we should run scans, we should send probes. Well, how long would that take? 6 to 7 days. And he's like, no, I'm not waiting that long. We're going now.
Right.
If she had said 24 hours max, he probably would have waited. But when she said a week, nope, all bets were off.
Don't you remember they did this in, I think it was Alien Covenant. They did the same thing. They went down to that planet and they didn't wear environmental suits. And that's how they got infected. Do you remember that?
One time. I saw it one time.
I think it was that one, but it was something so clearly obvious that they weren't wearing environmental suits on an alien planet. Of course you're going to get infected with something.
Right.
It's such a hole, in the plot that Maybe they could clean up with some kind of exposition, but they just don't.
Okay. If this same story had happened on Voyager or TNG, would you have the same complaint?
Sure.
You really? I mean, they beam down to new planets.
I give
all the time.
I give Enterprise a little bit of a break because they're new to this, but Voyager, I would expect them not to do that. But of course,
they always just beam down. This just happened to be the funky planet that had stuff in pollen.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
the
true.
same thing happened in TOS. In
Which one?
Is it the one where Spock falls in love with Leela Kalomi?
Which one was that?
The spores.
Oh, right. Okay.
And they beam down there, and
is that the one where Kirk becomes an Indian god?
No, that's the Paradise City.
Okay.
Or no, yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
No, this is I forget the title. This is the one where Spock runs into Leela Kalomi, who he had known from before, and she was a settler on this planet.
Right.
And whatever romance had been attempted with Spock, she and Spock didn't work because he was emotionless. But they do make, when they get down there, some very quick scientific observations. They're looking around, and Sulu, I think it is, brings it to the captain and said, there's no animals. There's barely enough crops to feed everyone. How have they survived this long? They start asking questions, logical questions, right away. And they are all in perfect health. Now, yeah, Kirk starts looking around. It doesn't take long for Spock to get hit with these spores, which turns out to be the reason. He starts having feelings, and he gets in the fight with Kirk at the end in the transporter room. Mm-hmm. Point being is that there was something that they could and did get exposed to not long after being there. They didn't know. They read that it was safe to breathe. They beamed down. That was it. And then something happened. So why are you being so judgmental of Archer just doing the same thing? If anything, he should get more of leeway because they don't know any better.
He was warned by T'Pol.
Yes.
And he just blatantly
That's true.
Shot her in the foot and said no. Basically said, screw you, we're going down anyway.
Yeah. Yes. I can't argue with you there.
They did not have that scene in that episode of TOS. So
No.
If there had been, I would have been critical of that too.
Yeah, no, they did not. When Spock raised his concerns, Kirk listened. And if he ignored it, he gave a reason. A good reason. And
well, I do enjoy that part of Enterprise, that aspect, that there is that friction between Archer and T'Pol.
Yeah, but just to be clear, though, you would not have the issues with this episode that you have if they had just had a line, even, of Archer acknowledging that he made a wrong choice. He made a tactical mistake. That to you would make the beginning.
That would have helped.
Okay.
That would have helped at the end, but still at the beginning, it's a little hard to swallow that they would have made this bad decision in the first place.
At least
they've brought T'Pol on
for her expertise,
and they're not listening to her. Yeah. It's a little frustrating.
Yeah, I mean you're right.
This is a woman that clearly knows things, and Archer is blatantly ignoring her. He's just going with his instinct anyway. Mm-hmm. So why even have her on board?
Fair point. Unfortunately,
maybe. I mean, I'm assuming it wasn't even Archer's decision to have her on board, was it?
No, it was.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yeah, that happened in the pilot where he said, "If I ask you to stay, or if I ask the government to have you stay, they'll think I'm weak." Mm-hmm. And that was his way of saying, "Can you ask? Because you're valuable."
I see.
I, just like you, acknowledge the bad choice at the beginning, but I forgive it because they're clearly just being way too exuberant and are not stopping to think. And that's what bit them in the ass. Now, so that for me isn't a problem. I do agree with you, however, that just like in the previous episode, there needs to be something to show that Archer acknowledges in this episode a bad choice, or in the previous episode something he could have at least done differently, mm-hmm. or should have tried to do differently. Mm-hmm. And that would have been nice, just for a bit of character growth, because he's learning like everybody else, and that would be interesting as an audience member to see the captain grow, because
he's the captain. He should be the most experienced out of all of them.
Well, he is,
but he's
never been. He's never gone to other planets either.
But he's traveled places as a kid, as a young adult. I'm sure, he's come to the realization that new places can be dangerous.
In their quick thing, I have less of an
I
issue
think it was a
than you
fool's
do.
mistake. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm not arguing that it was, but I think you can very reasonably explain it away with them just thinking, oh, it seems safe. Let's do it. They see a planet from the outside that looks like Earth. The scans show that it can support it. How bad could it be? And they know that they're beaming down to a, grass-filled woodland type area. It seems safe enough. And it scanned no life. So they figure there's relative safety.
They figured, but they didn't know.
Well, of course not.
No.
If we waited 7 days, this would be a very boring series.
Yes, I agree, but it could have worked out dramatically if they had done a few lines of dialogue.
I'm not arguing that with you. I agree. I would have liked to see some humility from Archer.
It's like in the last pod we did about fight or flight. Archer made 2 bad decisions.
I agree.
And they didn't do anything about it. The show didn't address it.
No,
Now he made another one. The dude does not have a good track record so far.
I do agree with you. I really, really do. And when he sends his report to Starfleet, they'll probably say, maybe next time do more scans.
Are you the guy we want out there? Like, maybe you should listen to that Vulcan you have on board.
It's difficult. Do you think you would have less of an issue? Okay, because take Voyager or TNG. When they arrive at a planet that they haven't been at, they, someone data will do a quick scan. Oh, it supports human life. And they just go. That's it. Do you think if they made less of a deal about it in the opening teaser, you would be less critical about it? If they just said, hey, it's Class M. Okay, let's go.
Yes, I realize the point you're trying to make, that you are making. I see what you're doing. Because, yes, in TNG, they go to alien worlds all the time. They beam down there and nothing bad ever happens.
I mean, it does.
Yes, sometimes.
Yeah.
But in this case, this is about a group of people that are literally the first humans to go anywhere.
So they should be extra cautious.
This is the point of the show.
Yeah.
In TNG, that yes, they were explorers, but not so much in this case. They weren't the first. So yes, caution, but I think they should be rule breaking, definitely, because the show would be boring, like you pointed out. But there should be characters that counter that caution and that are risk takers, and that's what pushes it forward. And that's drama, but that's also something that helps the characters grow too, and they realize that, yeah, we kind of don't know what we're doing out here.
Well, I do agree with you there. And like I said earlier, I think the scene with Phlox where, what's his name? Novakovich looks like he might not make it, and Archer's clearly, that this has affected him. That would have been the perfect moment to have Archer realize this is actually his fault, and that's it. And that tells you he will then learn from it. You don't need it at the end. It could have been right there, but that's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, 1 or 2 lines from Archer in that moment would have been decent enough, I think. Maybe Phlox could have reassured him then, or maybe affirmed that he did make a bad call.
I think it would have been perfectly sufficient for Archer to just say it. Like I said, say you're not the only one that made a mistake today, Doc. And that's it. He knows he made a mistake. So, by default, he will learn.
I think that's a good line. If you just said, well, Phlox, you're not the only person that was wrong today.
Yeah, that's it. That's all we need.
That's not bad.
The look on his face tells you everything else.
Yeah.
That this is a mistake he's going to learn from.
And I still would have liked to Paul, if she would have come up to him and said, next time, will you listen to me? Maybe you should, when I tell you that it's not safe.
Well, that probably happened when they got back to the ship. Unfortunately, they don't come face to face. I did like that she reverted to Vulcan, her language.
That was fine.
And that she had to send a message to Hoshi that way, to let them know what's going on without Trip freaking out.
Well, something we did mention was that she was slightly affected.
Slightly.
She lost a bit of her emotional control.
Yeah. She was clearly scared.
Which was, well, she was tense.
On edge.
Yes. But
like I like the...
it was a good scene. I mean, we don't usually get to see Vulcan speak Vulcan.
No, I do. I liked it. And I liked, I mean, it's a little thing, but I liked that when she was speaking to Hoshi over the comm, and she says something, and Archer looks at her like, okay, what do you think? And she said something to the effect of, Trip is going to kill me. She said Trip's going to kill her. It's like, okay. And I was like, ooh, I like that. I just like that delivery, that it came from someone else.
Right.
It's just the way it's put together. I liked it. I like that.
Well, because Hoshi says it so matter-of-factly.
Yeah.
And it just makes it feel so much more cold, I guess, when it's not. And
yeah. No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's a cry for help. And it's coming in this disguised way. I like it. It's interesting.
Yeah, that was good. I liked it too.
Yeah. But then it goes on just a bit too
long.
Well,
the not that part, but the standoff between.
Yeah, the standoff as a whole goes on just a little.
Yeah, I mean, Archer using deception to get Trip just to put his phaser down. Trying to, that was fine. I mean, but yeah, I think I'm glad we're both in agreement that it was.
I like the first part when he says, "Trust me, you're tripping. Whatever you think."
Well, I think that is something that anybody would say first.
But it worked.
Yeah.
And he put the gun down. But when he does the whole thing later, where he's like, "We're in secret communications with the Rock people,"
and T'Pol couldn't discuss it before.
I think they should have just skipped that and gone to the next part of the struggle in the cave, because it was repetitive and unnecessary, I thought. And to me, it's a little silly to hear the term rock people.
It was odd to him saying that. He's like, yes, we've made contact with these rock people, but now we've made them angry. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's some. And when it comes to sci-fi, I think you got to be real careful
is
about
it those rock monsters
your
from Star Trek V?
Yeah, it sounds goofy, so it sort of takes you out of the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what else was Trip going to call them? He's hallucinating. They're rock people.
I just like, there's people in the caves, or there's people living in the rocks, or something. Don't say the words rock people.
Yeah, no, yes, I agree. It sounded goofy. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It's like
unintentionally.
It's like
funny.
that TNG episode. What's the one where
I thought you were going to do the animal things.
That's what I was going to do.
Yeah, but
vicious animal things.
Vicious animal things, and then Picard,
what is it?
Picard goes
hide and Q.
That's hide and Q.
Hide and Q.
Yeah, Picard repeats animal things.
Animal things. Like, it sounds so ridiculous.
Yes, like in Attack of the Clones, when Padme says boyfriend.
Yeah, it just your ears go up and you're like, what?
What?
It just immediately took me out.
In this sci-fi fantasy world, boyfriend and girlfriend are terms that doesn't make any sense.
This is my girlfriend, Baru.
Yeah, like
just say this is my life mate, Baru, or something.
Yeah, say that. That's better.
Why.
Yeah,
that's why in Star Trek, they, with rare exception, ever say the words mom and dad. It's always mother and father. Yeah. It's one of those subtle things that separates you from today. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes annoying when you analyze it and humans say that, and they go, well, no one talks like that, but aliens do. So, they have to keep it more formal. And a lot of the aliens don't use contractions. Mm-hmm. It's another way. Worf rarely uses contractions. It's a way to make him seem different. It's just one of those subtle things. Don't say things like rock people or vicious animal things.
Vicious animal things. Animal things.
Don't have your English thespian say animal things.
I'm in Q's penalty box, sir.
Stop crying, woman.
I think that's all I have to say about Strange New World. Yeah, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, I think we covered everything.
What is your final grade?
I'm going to give this one an even B.
Isn't that what you said for the previous one? For Fight or Flight? An even B?
I think I did.
I think you said it with the exact same tone. An even B. I'm going to give it a C+. I would have given it a B-, but because of those criticisms I had, I just had to knock it down.
Okay.
It started off decent enough. A little bit of mystery, a little bit of spookiness, but kind of loses its way in the end.
Beep.
Beep. That was funny.
That was good.
Beep.
That
was a good moment for the Mayweather character. He usually didn't get a lot of moments that I remember.
He's very charismatic. He's a likable guy. Like, he's got that smile. You can't help but like the dude.
He does have a very Yes, likable.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Affable. Everybody
Yes,
likes
yes.
him guy.
Demeanor. That's what
Yeah,
I was looking
yeah,
for.
yeah,
Yes. So C plus, but that's slightly better than average. So I know some aren't going to get that grade.
Probably not.
Okay. Well,
What episode do you think is coming next? Do you have any thought?
no.
I still want to say now. I feel certain it's going to be the Bernadette
Well,
episode.
I don't even know what the title of that episode is or what it's about.
Bernadette.
I don't. If anybody does,
I told you what it is.
email us when we figure out what our email address is going to be.
It's a wayward human ship that crashed that should never have gotten out that far. And these are the children that were on that ship, but now they're adults and they don't remember.
Okay.
They were that young. They don't remember anything. They don't even know how to talk properly.
Oh, it's
So
like
they can't tell them who they were because they've lost their speech ability.
oh, it's like what was that? The Blue Lagoon, except not.
yeah. Not unlike that.
Yes.
In a similar sense, yes. Because their parents all died. So the kids from a very young age, they were basically wild people. Who
Or
didn't
Lord
even
of the
remember
Flies.
their roots.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll see you in the next one. Maybe it'll be the Bernadette one you've
Bernadette.
been mentioning. Okay.
Okay.